It's pretty hard to miss these days.
Yeah.
Tattoos, they're like everywhere, right?
Seriously, everywhere.
And it's not like just a small group of people anymore.
Right.
We're talking a huge chunk of the population, especially younger folks.
Yeah.
In some countries, like it's upwards of 20 to 25% of people who have tattoos.
Wow.
And like for younger generations, that number is even higher.
That's a lot.
It's really become mainstream, like a way to express yourself.
Solely a form of self-expression, for sure.
So with all this ink out there,
Yeah.
there's this new study that's really caught our attention.
Oh, yeah.
It was published in BMC Public Health,
Okay.
and it's looking at a possible connection between getting tattoos and the risk of developing cancer.
Interesting.
And this is something that feels pretty relevant right now.
For sure, with so many people getting tattoos.
Right.
Yeah. Any potential health impact is definitely something to look into.
So for this deep dive, we're going to dig into like the main findings of this research. We've been looking at some news reports about it.
Right.
And our goal is pretty simple,
Yeah.
to understand what this research suggests without getting lost in all the complex science stuff.
Makes sense.
We want to focus on the information that like really pops out and
Right.
what it might mean for you listening.
Got it.
Okay, so the big headline that jumps out is that this study found an overall increased cancer risk in people with tattoos.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
The researchers, they looked at data from over 2,000 twins,
Wow.
which is pretty cool because using twins helps account for, similarities in genes and environment.
No, that makes sense.
And what they found was that participants with at least one tattoo had a 62% higher chance of being diagnosed with cancer
Okay.
compared to their twin who didn't have any tattoos.
62% higher. That's
It's significant.
that's a pretty big difference. So like
Yeah.
if you think about it, if you had 100 people without tattoos,
Right.
this study suggests that you might see like around 162 people with tattoos being diagnosed of cancer.
Yeah, that's a noticeable difference for sure.
And it wasn't just any type of cancer, right? It seems like the size of the tattoo might actually matter.
Yeah, particularly when we're talking about skin cancer.
Okay.
What's really interesting is they found a connection between larger tattoos
Uh-huh.
and the risk of skin cancer.
Okay.
So the study indicated that for tattoos bigger than the size of your palm, the risk of skin cancer went up by a whopping 137%,
137%.
more than double the original risk.
Wow, that's definitely something to consider if you have or are thinking about getting a larger tattoo.
Absolutely.
And this wasn't the only type of cancer they looked at, right? The study also mentioned a higher risk for a cancer that affects the blood.
Exactly. Another key finding was about lymphoma,
Lymphoma.
which is a cancer of the lymphatic system.
All right.
So the lymphatic system is like this network in your body that helps fight infections.
Okay.
And the study showed a pretty big increase, actually 173% increase in the risk of lymphoma among people with tattoos.
173%. So we're looking at potentially higher risk for both skin cancer, where the ink is placed, and a cancer that involves the body's immune system.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why.
I know, it really makes you think, like, what could be the underlying reasons for this link?
Well, the researchers are concerned about how the tattoo ink interacts with the cells in your skin
Okay.
and the tissues around it.
Okay.
They think that this interaction could potentially lead to some serious health issues over time.
Serious health issues. That sounds a little scary.
Yeah.
What is it specifically about the ink that has them worried?
Well, one of the main concerns is that the ink particles, they don't just stay put.
Really?
Yeah, the study mentions that these tiny particles can actually move and build up in the lymph nodes
Uh-huh.
near the tattoo.
Okay.
And from there, they think these particles could possibly travel through the bloodstream to other parts of the body.
So it's not just like a localized thing on the skin.
Right. It's not just skin deep.
Ink can move around.
Potentially, yeah.
That would kind of explain why they're seeing a link to cancers that aren't just skin cancer, right?
Exactly.
And I remember reading something about the ingredients in tattoo ink, like the actual ingredients being a cause for concern as well.
Yeah, you're right.
Like what's in the ink itself?
The study really emphasizes the potential role of cancer-causing substances in these inks.
Oh, wow.
Like they specifically mentioned black ink,
Okay.
which is the most common type, right? And one of its common ingredients, carbon black,
Carbon black.
which comes from burning things like soot.
Okay.
And the IIRC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, they've classified carbon black as possibly carcinogenic to humans,
Possibly carcinogenic.
which means there's some evidence that suggests it could potentially cause cancer.
So even one of the most basic parts of tattoo ink has some level of cancer concern.
It does raise some red flags.
Yeah.
And it's not just black ink.
Oh,
The study also talked about the dangers of colored inks.
okay.
Many of them contain these things called acyzo compounds,
Essays?
which are chemical compounds that can break down and release carcinogenic aromatic amines.
Carcinogenic aromatic amines, those sound.
They are linked to cancer,
Right?
and they can be released when exposed to sunlight
Oh,
or even during laser tattoo removal.
so even trying to get rid of a tattoo
Yeah,
could release these harmful things.
it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, most people probably don't even realize that.
It's true.
It's like this whole other layer of complexity.
It really shows you how complex it is to introduce foreign materials into the body
Yeah.
and the potential for long-term consequences that we're just starting to understand.
Right, like we just don't know everything yet.
Exactly.
So beyond the chemicals in the ink, the study also talks about another biological process that might be involved.
Oh, right. Inflammation.
Yeah, inflammation.
That's a big one.
So what's the connection there?
Well, they're suggesting that the act of getting a tattoo, the actual process of putting the ink in your skin, causes inflammation at that spot. And their concern is that this initial inflammation could become chronic.
Chronic inflammation.
Yeah, meaning it just keeps going over a long period.
Right, like this ongoing irritation.
Exactly.
And we know that chronic inflammation is linked to all sorts of health
Oh,
problems.
yeah, for sure, including cancer.
So the study is basically suggesting that this ongoing inflammation from the tattoo
Right.
could increase the risk of abnormal cell growth.
Exactly, particularly for skin cancer and lymphoma, since they're directly connected to the skin and the immune system.
Right, that makes sense.
It's basically cells growing and multiplying out of control, which is a hallmark of cancer.
It's like the body is constantly reacting to the ink being there.
Yeah.
And over time, that reaction could create an environment where abnormal cells are more likely to develop.
That's the concern.
And they also mentioned that the risk might increase gradually over time
That's right.
because of those ink particles interacting with the body.
Yeah, with their potential cancer-causing properties.
So it's not necessarily an immediate effect,
Not necessarily.
but something that could show up years or even decades later.
It's a long game.
This is a pretty big deal,
It is.
especially considering how popular tattoos have become.
You're right. The news reports emphasize how much the percentage of people with tattoos has grown
Yeah.
worldwide.
Right, like it's 20 to 25% in some countries.
Yeah, and almost double that for young adults.
So this possible connection to cancer,
Yeah,
even if it needs more research, is something we need to pay attention to,
definitely.
given how many people have tattoos.
Absolutely.
So let's bring it back around to our listeners,
Sure.
What are the key things to take away from this deep dive into this new research?
Well, the main points are that this study, with over 2,000 twins,
Right.
found a link between having tattoos and a higher overall risk of cancer.
Okay.
Specifically, they found a much higher risk of skin cancer with larger tattoos,
Uh-huh.
those bigger than your hand,
Right.
and an increase in the risk of lymphoma in people with tattoos.
And they pointed to a couple of main reasons behind this connection.
Yeah.
The makeup of the ink itself,
Right.
with things like carbon black and lyso compounds,
Is that correct?
raises concerns about being exposed to cancer-causing agents.
For sure.
And the other big thing they highlighted was the potential for long-term inflammation at the tattoo site,
Right.
triggered by the ink,
Yeah,
which could lead to abnormal cell growth over time.
exactly.
But it is really important to remember that this is just one study.
It is?
We're
Yeah.
still learning about this.
Absolutely.
While these findings suggest a possible increased risk, more research is needed to really understand how strong this connection is.
I agree. Scientific understanding evolves,
Right.
as we get more studies and more data.
So here's something to think about.
Oh,
Considering how common and permanent tattoos are becoming,
right.
what other research do you think is important for us to understand the long-term health implications of tattooing?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, it's something to ponder, for
Yeah.
sure.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
It's been enlightening.
It has. And we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.